Welcome to Whiskey Gaming, and this is my late review of Prince of Persia Warrior Within. I played it on the PC via Steam. If you still have a disc, you can play it on the Xbox. Okay, so let's get into it. Once again, you play as the prince, who, again, has no name, but this is the same prince from the Sands of Time. And the game starts out with him being hunted by the Dahaka. The Dahaka exists to basically straighten out the timeline and fix any anomalies, which you created. And so the prince sets out on a journey to prevent the creation of the Sands of Time in order to save his life from the Dahaka. And of course, it's not that simple. There are some twists and turns along the way. And I gotta say, overall, I actually enjoy the story of this game, although I will say, and I think it will be prevalent throughout, that this game was kind of weird in that it tried to be dark and edgy, and I don't think that benefited the game. And some of the first areas you will notice it being darker and edgier are in the audio. Some of the music does have that Middle Eastern vibe to it, but for the majority of it, it is heavy metal and hard rock to sell the edge. There's even like the music from a Godsmack song, no lyrics, but the music. But also to make it edgier, they replaced the voice actor for the prince with somebody who can sell that dark and edgy sound. But he does admittedly do a good job. I mean, it does distract you at first, but as it goes on, that voice does fit with the tone they're going for. He is the primary voice actor you will hear. You do hear from a couple of other characters, and they do pretty well. They're not mind-shattering. As for the sound effects, I think the sound effects in the game are well done. I did unfortunately run into one issue, and it was an audio-video issue, and that was that the audio and video got completely out of sync for me in multiple cutscenes. I mean, they would start out fine, but then as the cutscene progressed, they would get further and further out of sync, and it got weird. But let's get into the gameplay mechanics and whatnot, and this is, once again, a third-person parkour traversal with some combat-style game. Unfortunately, and to this game's detriment, it also tries to be a little Metroidvania, including locking the good ending behind some of that Metroidvania-ness. And the reason I say that doesn't work for this game is because the fact that it has a really, really shit map. So remembering a secret area that you may have spotted but couldn't have gotten to at the time, well, you're kind of fucked. I mean, you're not. You can go look up guides, and if you have a phenomenal memory, that might benefit you, but it kind of sucks that they did that, in my opinion. But like I said, the map really sucks. They give you a map, but it's not useful for navigating, and they'll put markers on it for where your next objective is, but again, it's not useful for navigating, so it's like, why even fucking bother? There's actually an entire section where they have a marker in an area on the map, and you're basically required to go everywhere but where that marker is, and so that's just completely stupid and a waste of time. As for the traversal, it works very similarly to the first game, and that's not a bad thing. I like the traversal element in the Prince of Persia games. I think it's kind of fun, and it was unique at the time. As for the combat, they really expanded on the combat in this game. They give you the ability to dual wield, they give you other attacks using that same button, but if you don't have a weapon, you'll get access to other attacks for it. Some of the powers you get from the Sands of Time, though, because they are still a part of this, really suck. The first game, I think, had some better powers in regards to that. Some of the other ones are fine and they are useful, but the ones that I would have liked to be better was like the Rage of Sands or something like that, where you used to be able to warp around and like really fuck up enemies. Now you just swing wildly and do almost no damage. But other than that, I think they added a lot to the combat. And I want to say that it was a huge improvement, but they also tweaked some of the enemies so that even though they added stuff to the combat, it wasn't necessarily beneficial. This game does, once again, allow you to upgrade your health. It allows you to collect new swords. It allows you to, upgrade your sand tank and sand powers, although those are kind of just pushed on you, same with the swords. But I do have some complaints, like there are more than a few fights that begin immediately after cutscenes, and they tend to immediately have you under attack so that you can't even react. Like the cutscene ends and you're already being hit. That's very frustrating. It's very bullshit, to put it simply. This game also has terrible checkpointing. There are so many checkpoints that happen right before cutscenes, so you may end up watching the same cutscene like 5 to 10 times, depending on if you can nail the run that you need to nail. Because it is an interesting element that they drop the Dahaka in, not randomly, they are scripted areas, but then you're suddenly on the run and you have to do all this traversal that you may have never done before, and you may be doing some of it kind of blind. Which means you may die with consistency and then have to watch the same cutscene over and over and over and over. And I've got to say, once again, I think the camera is a huge enemy in this game. It's not as bad as it was in the Sands of Time, but make no mistake that while the camera is better, there are more than a few occasions where it will be your enemy as well. So let's get into the controls, and I think the controls work well enough. I never had a problem with them and their responsiveness, but once again, I don't feel that the PC is necessarily the best place for the Prince of Persia games. I still was able to get through and control it, and I do think that it worked overall better than the Sands of Time, but I still don't think you get the same precise movement from the PC that you could get with the stick on a controller. Now, as for the graphics and visuals, I've got to say this game takes a huge leap forward. There is so much more detail in the world and in the design of the world, but I'm going to comment on it because, once again, it's trying to be dark and edgy. So all the women are really overly sexualized, everything is darker, everything is bloodier, the prince looks more aggressive and mopey and angry. And I felt like that was just kind of a really weird way to go with it after the first game, but it's definitely where they went, and they try and sell it even harder in the visuals. Even looking at the weapons you get, a lot of them have this darker, edgier kind of vibe to them where they're supposed to look meaner and aggressive, or, you know, it's just kind of ridiculous how hard they were going for it. Like, they were seriously trying hard. But I will say, once again, I do like the world that they have built. I like the design of, like, the Dahaka. I think a lot of the enemies actually have a cool design. I think the prince actually, like, his armor and stuff is pretty cool looking. I just wish they hadn't made him look so, like, angsty, I guess is how I would phrase it. But again, like I said, this is a game about traversal, so, I mean, obviously the world is built around this traversal element, and I think, once again, they did a good job building a world around it and not making it feel like a set piece, which I think is important. Otherwise, you end up with games that just, the world feels pointless. They could be taking place in, like, a practically flat VR situation. So I think doing that actually takes some talent, takes some effort, and I think it's well worth the time by the developers. And I think it shows in this game. I think the animation is, once again, very well done. I think that's important in a game like this when you have that traversal as well as combat elements to make it not look shitty. So to wrap it up, Prince of Persia Warrior Within is not as good as the first game in some ways. In other ways, there's a clear evolution, and I think that evolution is beneficial for the series. I just don't think they went the best way with it, and it has its issues. It has considerable issues to the point where I would say you may want to play it, but if you're going to play it, absolutely don't buy it at full price right now. Wait for a Steam sale. They happen all the friggin' time. Okay, so in the comments down below, why don't you tell me, did you watch the Prince of Persia movie? Man, I forgot that was a thing at one point. Man, I'm glad I forgot that was a thing. And as always, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button. And if you like what I'm doing in general, share and subscribe. Have a good one.